Hey guys, so welcome to Coronavirus and Property Investment today. I'm Brett Legalwood, and today we're going to cover hyperinflation and could we all be, wheeling around wheelbarrows full of money. I'm sure we've all seen the images of that sort of thing from Zimbabwe and various places that have had hyperinflation. And I think to start off with, before you get really worried about what we're going to talk about and that sort of thing, I don't think that we're heading for that. I don't think we're heading for that on any level. I think it would require, because the world is so thing. Now, to be fair, Venezuela right now is in hyperinflation. They're struggling to get on top of that. Obviously, there's a lot of external influences and there's a lot of things going on there. And there's a lot of people leaving the country because of, they can't afford to stay. But it really is, we talk about depression, which is a long time, that sort of thing. Hyperinflation can also be for a long time too. But it's a little bit different where in depression, everything's depressed. Air prices are depressed. Everything's going down. Nothing's moving. High unemployment. Whereas hyperinflation, you will have high unemployment because not a lot's happening, but you're also going to have massive rises in prices. And what is hyperinflation? It's 50% or more increase in prices in 1 month. 1 month. So if you imagine whatever your wage is today, it's worth half as much the next month, if you like. It's just, to live through that would be incredible. But anyway, let's get started with it and we'll sort of guide through. But look, I think, for me, this is sort of the extreme, but we'll get into the coronavirus. So I've got 10 days left on my clock. We started from 30 down to 10. So that's looking like we might have to extend it a bit. UK has been locked down, they said, for 21 days. They've got 8 days left. So potentially it could be, maybe another week added onto that. But let's see what happens, because actually a lot can happen, as we've seen, in 1 week, okay? And 70 days for the, to get back into things. But 2020, I think, is most definitely cancelled. I don't think there's going to be much happening. Yeah, I think we'll be back to relatively normal life in 2020, absolutely. But we shall see. It's an evolving thing. 1.348 million people with the cases right now. 75,000 deaths are still skyrocketing in the USA. The UK is also getting hammered as well. Lots of deaths there. It's interesting with the deaths and why that is, but I haven't looked into that. It might be worth looking into. But, it is amazing. That is, those numbers go all the way back to effectively a week ago Monday. So, you've virtually got a week and 2 days, and we're half that. So it's amazing how quickly it does increase. Yeah. Now, if we're tracking the recovery side, 361,000 of those 1.348 are actually recovered, which is great news. Have outcomes. There's a number of deaths, which was 74,000, and then 286 have recovered. So 79% so far of the outcomes have recovered. Okay, so that's just some good news. I'd rather focus on the positive than the negative. Interestingly, so let's get into the hyperinflation. I don't know whether many of you guys know, but back in 2004, I was actually a trillionaire, all right? And in fact, not just a trillionaire, $100 trillion that was. Now, they were Zimbabwean dollars, okay? One of our clients was from Zim and actually was over buying property, funnily enough, in the UK. They were based in the UK anyway, but they had some Sim dollars from when they went across there, and so I exchanged them. I actually exchanged £50 for a whole range of notes. So I got £1 million note, I got a 100 trillion. It was amazing to get and have a look at this. And basically what they said to me was the money's actually worthless, But I had $50 and that's the only change I had in the thing. So I gave them $50 and I said, here we go. And so I got that. So for a while there, I was actually a trillionaire, but albeit in Zimbabwe. And the reason I say that is because this is a really good example of hyperinflation. We look at the pound, $1 trillion pound note now. It doesn't exist, of course. And in fact, it didn't exist before hyperinflation. They had it between 2004 and 2009. And, in that time now, there was a lot of political issues happening then, okay, with, I've forgotten the guy's name. Anyway, Mugabe. And, but basically they never had this. They had to print it. And it was a real issue because what actually happened was that you had the Zimbabwean dollars and you had the US dollars. And most people preferred to trade in US dollars because they weren't being inflated away. This currency was worth nothing. So they were just printing more and more money. And we'll talk through why that causes hyperinflation and what it actually means. So look, the case for hyperinflation. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so actually I shouldn't have a smiley face there because hyperinflation is not really smiling about. Need to turn that smile upside down. But no, look, bottom line is how hyperinflation comes about is this. First of all, the supply of money. Okay, this is the first way that hyperinflation kicks in, generally, which is the government prints more money, loads of it. Okay, now you might say, well, that's actually happening right now. And yeah, you could say that. Government prints more. Prices start to rise because there's so much money, liquidity in the market being pumped in, okay? But the government keeps printing, and they keep printing more and more and more and more, okay? Whether that be pay their bills or obviously in a hyperinflation setting, one thing that happens is any debts are inflated away to nothing. If you've got a fixed debt of £50,000 and that's a week's wage, 1 week you can pay that off. The challenge is at the same time, what's going to happen is your groceries are going to go up, your stables and all that sort of stuff is going to go up. So phase one, okay, of hyperinflation is the government prints massive amount of money, okay, and that's where you see people with wheelbarrows in there to go buy a bag of or a loaf of bread or whatever. The second phase is this: because there is so much hyperinflation, everybody goes, well, actually, I'm not going to buy my usual shopping for this week and then I'll come next week. What they're going to do is they're going to go and buy as much as they can possibly afford with the money they have, and they're going to hoard everything. So this is where you've seen toilet paper and things like this in a similar sort of setting where people go and buy so much toilet paper that there's a demand pull, all right, which is what we call here. Demand pull is simply that there's so much demand for things that they run out, and that drives prices up even further because the shopkeeper's there going, hold on a sec, if I sell today, not tomorrow, and I don't have more stock coming in, I'm getting issues, so I'm going to put the prices up. So now we have two things acting at, and generally the government keeps printing money, and that's the issue that we have here, yeah. And bottom line is you've got the demand pull, you've got the QE or the quantitative easing, the liquidity being pumped in, the printing of money and the circulation, but then on top of that, cash is worthless, yeah, because today it's worth this, tomorrow it's worth half as much or whatever it is, yeah? And the poor really suffer for that because the poor generally have cash, they don't have assets. If you've got assets and you've got debt against those assets, well, in no time your 100,000 mortgage becomes, a loaf of bread mortgage, and that's the reality of hyperinflation. Obviously you've got to be able to survive and all that sort of stuff, but the currency plummets as well. So this is kind of a third thing that happened where because the currency's gone down now in value against other currencies, outside goods become so much more expensive. So you've got this massive different things that are just hitting, and it really presents a major problem, okay? Now, the other thing, where has it happened before? Because it has happened. Oh, sorry. US Civil War. Now, they weren't tracking the actual figures there, but there was massive hyperinflation because what they were doing is they were printing so much money to be able to pay for the war, okay? So, and this is one of the problems. In times of war, oftentimes they print so much money. Now, in Germany, they had it after World War I, where actually they were able to calculate that, and it was 20.9% per day. Per day, yeah? Now, you compound that, that is a massive amount. Venezuela, 2013 to current, still happening, yeah? In 2019, the inflation rate was 3,497%, yeah? That's pretty full on. Zimbabwe, 2004 to 2009, 98% per day, yeah? Which means basically, imagine living under those conditions. It's just almost impossible to think about. But that's the reality of hyperinflation. So I hope that gives you the broad strokes, and we don't need to go into too much detail. As I said, my take on this is we're not heading for this, okay? But I think it's good to put that to the side so you feel more comfortable, you understand it, one. And number two is that you realise why we're not going to head into that. And I'll see if I can build a bit of a compelling case for that now. But it's not certain. It could happen. Part of me in saying I don't think it'll happen, half of me is the economics of it and looking, at the history and how often it does happen and generally the circumstances that need to be prevalent. The other half is, oh shit, I hope not. It's that hope. And I guess, that's how it's going to be. Look, and guys, if you've got any questions about this, you can pump it into the comments section. I can answer them, while we're on there. But look, why won't it happen? Okay, so let's have a look at that. So bottom line is, if you look at the Fed, the Reserve Bank of Canada, Australia, all the central banks, the Reserve Bank, I just put Reserve Bank twice. The Bank of England there, their job is to stop it and control inflation, okay? And really, much of the money that they control isn't in circulation, yeah? Now, there's other sides of this coin which might say, well, hold on a sec, the US dollar being the reserve currency, the Fed controls all of that. Well, no, they don't actually control all of that. And the argument is that in actual fact, the euro dollar is becoming the reserve currency because of so many derivatives that may be in in US dollars, but aren't controlled by the Fed. So there's a number of aspects which are they're too big a concepts to talk about out here. It's not a foregone conclusion. And people saying that, the Fed controls it all and they can control inflation. No, that's not the case anymore, Totally. There is a massive element of that is correct, yeah? But look, hyperinflation happens most in times of political upheaval where the system collapses. Now, you might be sitting there and watching some of these, conspiracy theories and 5Gs and all these sort of, things about coronavirus and, vaccinations and, all this thing and be thinking, wow, but the system is collapsing. That's what's happening. Well, you know what? This system has been like this, and you can go back to the news and you can watch the news and see how the system's been collapsing for so many years. You would think that it would have collapsed by now. It hasn't. Yeah, it actually has been quite a robust system for us to grow into. Yes, it disadvantages the poor, advantages the wealthy, 1%, all that sort of stuff. That is part of the system, but the reality is it is a reasonably stable system, albeit not fair. Nobody's saying it's fair, but the reality is of that, it is a stable system. We've got through, look, the Great Depression was there. We learned some lessons from that. We then forgot about them largely, but we've had 2008. I think we're very different than 2008, and as a property investor, 2008 was about the property, market, the mortgage crisis, so the funds all dried up. Now it's not so much about that. It's about coronavirus, and it's about the whole system. It has been press pause. Every country, 2/3 of the world's population are on the pause button now. Very little movement is happening right now, but there is still movement. I went to the shops today and I said to we were in M&S and M&S, and I said, how busy are you? And they said, no, we're actually pretty steady. I'm thinking, hold on, we're in lockdown, first day of lockdown here in Singapore, and M&S is still busy. It wasn't as busy as that, and they had social distancing rules and that sort of thing. But, I've seen things where Sainsbury's, have one in, one out sort of thing, where they've got a limited amount of people and that. So there's still movement. There's still, the economy hasn't, when I say pause, the property market has paused. But in actual fact, the property market, this is one of the surprising things, is that there's still inquiries in that from that perspective. But look, the big things for if we hit hyperinflation, if you're worried about it and you don't, you're not convinced that the system is relatively stable and robust, and yes, it's going to go through changes, and there will be changes, throughout, and there'll be massive changes over the next few years with, AI and robotics and all that sort of stuff, and the way people work, and but in actual fact, coronavirus has probably enhanced that and sped that up now, because we're all used to Zoom, we're all used to virtual meetings now. I've got drinks with the boys on Friday virtually. It's going to be quite interesting to do that. But it's we're doing that. Why not? We can't be together, so let's catch up in our office. But anyway, so look, how do we overcome this? So bottom line is, cash becomes useless, and because cash is useless, you can't just walk into a shop and go that. So then you got to look at bartering. Yeah. So do you have anything that can be bartered? And whether that be you barter with them, who barters with them for something that you want, you'll find communities will get together and find, well, actually, we need a bag of rice. and you've got this and I've got that. So if you put that together, that's a bag of rice, bartering, So that's where you've got to be a bit creative. And, if you don't know your neighbour yet, maybe you should speak to your neighbour and get to know them, because it may well be that you have a better barter group, if this was to happen. But, what you tend to find, and what you found in like Zimbabwe, which is one of the ones I know a fair bit about, was that in Zimbabwe, all of a sudden, the Zimbabwe dollar was going massively inflation, but the US dollar become the currency. Now, it was outlawed, but people just ignored the outlawed and they just kept bartering under it. So you can look at that. Now, you can get into gold, and you can get into silver and all that sort of stuff, but the reality is that's all probably more advanced for this. And, if you haven't got it already, then it's probably the wrong time to jump into these things if you don't really know what they're doing and you don't know what they are, because there's upsides and there's downsides to everything like that. But, look, gold and silver, things like hard, assets like jewelry, you can, if you've got a gold watch, or you can potentially use that because that's a store of value. The other thing is, get your passport, make sure your passport's current, because if you need to and it gets so bad that you've got to leave, this is what we're finding in Venezuela, is you've got so many Venezuelans leaving to go across to various places, and they're effectively migrating. So have your passport ready, because if you've got to leave and go, you want that, you need that ability, that ID document to move. That's the worst case. Do I think that's going to happen? No, I don't. I think we're pretty safe from hyperinflation. It's more likely to be inflation that come out of this, or deflation, but I think more likely right now it's inflation, but not hyperinflation. So hopefully that gives you a bit of insight, guys, into hyperinflation. I don't think we're going to be walking around with wheelbarrows. First of all, we're a cashless society, largely cashless society. If anything, it'll move us closer to being a cashless society, and that's what the powers that be want. But I think, I thought it was something to look into. It's more to discount it so you don't have to worry about it. And I think really you don't have to worry about it. There's plenty of people out there that will say, oh yes, that could happen. I don't see it happening. Not in the circumstances that are around there. All right, guys, hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea. Have a great day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay at home right now. All right, we'll see you again tomorrow at 9 a.m. London time, or 4 p.m. Singapore time. All right, guys, see you later. Bye. Have a great day.